Bitcoin's price holds above a key support level as dispersion in the altcoin market continues. We cover all this right now in the Collective Shift weekly recap, actionable insights, and a breakdown into the crypto market, all in under 30 minutes. More green in for Bitcoin and certain altcoins, Simon.
Yeah, I think right now we're starting to see, I think, some complacency in the rest of the market because people aren't quite noticing this, I think, and this continuation of green is showing so much strength for Bitcoin. But I don't think people have started to clue on. I don't think people are as excited as maybe they should be. You know, this is potentially, the start of a big push higher in prices.
For sure. I think Bitcoin on track for, starting off this early week, on track for its fifth consecutive weekly gain. The fact that it's put in four of those is in and of itself meaningful, particularly, where it's closing this range that you've been sharing. With members, the support band, good to see Bitcoin putting in consistent closes in the early to mid 90,000s. Once we broke through that, you did highlight how important it was for that follow through. And yeah, I guess that follow through has come. So increasing the chances, all things considered, increasing the chances that Bitcoin can continue higher. So yeah, it's been really encouraging to see. And I really, echo your thoughts there in terms of, I don't think people are appreciating how significant it is that Bitcoin is holding in this key area here. And I think in terms of altcoin returns, one thing I can see in that sort of complacency is we're really having, I guess, separating the really great altcoins or really promising altcoins continue to sort of break away from the pack. Yes, that has been a trend that was going on, arguably is always happening, but I think in moments like this, paying attention to which ones are breaking away from the pack, is very important, because once you get that follow through, once Bitcoin does rip up higher, you can guarantee, in my opinion, that those altcoins will be well positioned to keep doing well. So Sui, we'll get to that a bit later in the episode, but notably seeing its performance even after the conference it had, which we'll talk about, was even more encouraging, arguably, than the run-up itself. But as you can see on your screen there, up 53% over the past 30 days. Solana up 20%. They're the two big standouts. And also Hyperliquid, I've noted, has done quite well, up 70% in the past 30 days. You can see on your screen there. A lot of the other major altcoins, if they are up in the past 30 days, most of them, it's only by single figures. With Bitcoin, of course, one of those in double figures, so up 13%. And that's why we've seen Bitcoin dominance continue to climb higher. Even in the last week, we've seen it hit 4-year highs once again, nearly touching 65% there for Bitcoin dominance. So that story continues to be a big one in this bull market.
Yeah, and I think you've called out a really good thing there, looking at which ones have had strength, because I see plenty of people talking about, this hasn't performed yet, it's going to catch up. I think that's a bit of a fool's game, really, because if it's not running now, then what's the fundamental reason why it's not? And it's probably because it's off narrative, or it's not quite hitting its developer metrics. It's just not quite what the users want. And so I think it's a risky strategy to sit there and think, oh, my coin hasn't performed yet, it's going to catch up. I don't know if that's the case anymore. We have too many coins, we have too many options, and I think really it is more of a case of the ones that are outperforming now will probably continue to outperform. So as you were highlighting on the charts there, the ones that have moved, I think they're more likely the ones that will keep moving, and the ones that haven't had any success yet or haven't really pushed from the bottom, I don't know if they're going to actually have a good return for the rest of the cycle.
Yeah, for sure. I think I used to sort of I used to be one of those who would wait for the rotation, but certainly now I'm strongly in the camp of respecting the momentum and assuming that they will continue once Bitcoin does continue higher. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out. As we've been talking about in recent weeks, Simon, the Federal Reserve, they had April off. Most of that was a big reason why we're in a holding pattern, it seemed, ever since all the hype around the tariffs and all the headlines. A big reason why we've been in this holding pattern, yes, the 90-day pause, but also the fact the Federal Reserve wasn't really able to meaningfully weigh in on monetary policy. That is all going to change now that they are scheduled to meet on, May the 6th and 7th. They'll announce any changes on May the 7th. And while it's expected that interest rates will stay on hold, I think the main thing, as always, is the commentary by Jerome Powell, who as we can see on our screen there, and as we've been covering, has faced increasing pressure from the likes of Donald Trump and Scott Bessent about pressure on Jerome Powell to cut rates. Still, the market is banking on the fact that that won't happen. There's a strong likelihood that rates will hold steady, but hey, we'll see if Powell sort of concedes anything in his press conference. What I mean by that is, will he come out with more sort of dovish language or more language in his press conference that sort of signals to the market that the Fed is now strongly considering cutting rates, whereas previously maybe they were a bit more on the fence and on this wait and see mode. So, that's all quite important for the short-term outlook on the market. As we've said, this year there'll be multiple rate cuts at this rate. So whether it happens now, June, July, not really that important from my standpoint, from an investor's standpoint, but certainly this week it'll be all the talk.
Definitely, and I think we flagged this 2 months ago saying this could be a big one, but I think maybe it's watering down a bit. But as you say, it's all about what Powell says. He knows he can move markets with his words. And so it doesn't seem like there's going to be a rate cut. That seems to be pushed out to at least in a few months away potentially. That's possibly due to the fact that the stock markets are actually rallying pretty well. So I think the tariff fears have kind of subsided. So Powell's kind of said, hey, I was sitting this out the whole time just to see what happened, and he's probably being rewarded for sitting it out and not doing much about any of the tariff stuff and letting the market do market things. But I guess the things that I'm looking for is that remaining QT, whether he does announce that they're going to stop that entirely, because they drastically reduced it at the last meeting. So it'd be interesting to see if they now, we are finishing off that QT. Quantitative tightening, I should say. The other big thing that came out recently was the first quarter GDP growth for the US. It wasn't growth, it was negative. So they've had a negative quarter. And so now the eyes are on, well, what's going to happen this next quarter? Because if this next quarter is negative, that's technically a recession. So it'll be interesting to see what Jerome Powell says about that and whether he wants to combat that. But I know in a month's time or so, Trump and Powell will be talking about that a lot more and trying to do whatever they can to avoid that dreaded technical recession that's going to occur. So that's the things I'm interested to hear him talk about. And then there'll be an analysis for days and days about what he says, I'd say.
Yeah, certainly. So we'll keep an eye out on that. In terms of major crypto news from the past 7 days or so, last episode we spoke about MasterCard really extending, I guess, their push into the stablecoin market, notably sort of doing end-to-end payments and allowing merchants that support MasterCard, they are now able to, I suppose, nominate to accept payments in stable coins, which previously wasn't a thing. Just about a day or two later, we saw Visa, obviously the big competitor to MasterCard. They partnered with Bridge, who was the largest sort of acquisition in the industry's history. That happened in October last year when Stripe acquired Bridge. So they're basically a stablecoin infrastructure company, and they partnered together last week to allow developers to offer stablecoin-backed Visa cards. So that is starting in 6 countries in South America, and Visa did announce that they intend to expand to Asia, Africa, and Europe in the following months. So once again, more people becoming familiar with stablecoins, having it as an option. And overall, I guess the more stablecoin adoption takes off, well, yeah, the more people will become aware of it and the potential cost efficiencies, both for merchants, in terms of taking or having to take on and pay less fees to, big players like Visa and MasterCard, but certainly benefits to consumers as well in terms of, being able to essentially send money around the world for a lot less of a cost than I guess it historically has been. So yeah, it's been really cool to see this trend of stablecoin adoption continue. And I'll share a great report that I did find later in the episode.
Yeah, I like that Visa and MasterCard, they're not going down the path of Kodak or Blockbuster. They're seeing the future here and they're pivoting hard into it because I think they know, like, obviously blockchain technology is a great payments network, and so Visa and MasterCard are a great payments network, and they're like, oh my god, this one is going to come and eat our lunch if we don't do something. So hats off to them for doing that. And my second take on this one is simply that I've talked about this multiple times, that the biggest thing that the US really want is stablecoin regulation, and they want everybody in the world using stablecoins. because now all these South American countries, all their citizens can start exchanging in US dollars. Like, if that is not going to protect the world reserve currency, I don't know what is. All those countries tend to have a black market for US dollars anyway, because their own fiat currencies aren't that stable. So a lot of them use US dollars, and so now they have easy, safe, reliable access to US stablecoins. I mean, I can see a world where every third world country, every South American country, every African country, a lot of the Asian countries are just going to be using US stablecoins for payments. That's just an amazing heaven, come true for US governments.
Yeah, absolutely. It feeds into so many sort of macro trends that we're seeing. The emergence of stablecoins and the impact on the dollar potential is huge, for sure. I think another big sort of American company here we got this week, Apple, potentially having some implications here, Simon, on I guess what crypto projects may and may not be able to do with their apps.
Yeah, so Apple, people may not know that they have quite a high tax on any in-app purchases. If you've got an app on your iOS device, your Apple device, any purchase you make in that app, Apple take a 30% commission on it. And so that's a very, very high tax. But they have a lovely monopoly on that. And so they can have this high tax. But developers were developing ways to get around that. They would send you to links outside of the app so that they can, make a charge, make a payment, and not incur that 30% tax. So they got to obviously make it obviously cheaper or keep some more money towards themselves. Apple's tending to ban those developers who are building those types of apps and pushing them away and getting them off their iOS systems. So there's been a court ruling saying that Apple can't do that anymore. They cannot stop these developers from linking you to other payment systems. And so this is good for just anybody actually who creates apps for iOS devices, but it's also great for crypto because now things like NFT marketplaces can be created directly on the iOS. There can be DeFi can go on it, so Aave could be directly used on iOS. So it opens up a whole nother level of options, I guess, for developers, and hopefully makes it easier for crypto projects to want to be on there. And gaming, obviously gaming is a big one. You can create a blockchain game directly on iOS now, which has obviously always been quite the restriction before because blockchain games already have a fee for using them, and so now 30% cheaper is always better. So I'm not sure what's going to come from this, but I think it's obviously a good thing, and it's also to a degree breaking down the monopoly that Apple has.
Yeah, we'll pick up on we'll monitor whether there is an uptake in sort of app usage and certain apps in general being released in the crypto space or even upgraded. A lot of them, as we know, are quite basic in their features, partially because of not wanting to support payments. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on whether that functionality increases in the coming weeks and months. But yeah, that App Store upgrade or mandated upgrade has already happened from seeing here. So yeah, good find there, Simon. In terms of altcoin news, in the past a couple of months, it has been radio silence in many regards. But now we actually have got a few that we can bring to your attention. Of course, Sui, one of our favorites. They did have their major Basecamp conference in Dubai last week. Did you see any sort of big updates out of that event, Simon?
I have been watching a few of these now, and I was hoping for some new out-of-the-box updates. I think their biggest thing was just showcasing their Sui gameplay, but I think a lot of it was Sui people patting each other back, talking about how great it is to be Sui. So I guess from that kind of announcement perspective, I was a little bit let down. But to be fair, I mean, maybe Sui does get to have its little showboating moment because it obviously has been doing very well in on-chain metrics and price. So I think they've probably got the ability to just, hey, let everyone know that they've been doing a really great job. And I think that's what they were doing more at the Sui Basecamp rather than anything groundbreaking that I found coming out of it.
Yeah, and that's like arguably like why I'm even more surprised about the post-conference price action. It's sort of a general sort of a thing that you do see in crypto is the hype leading up to the conference causes price to really rally. And even if they sometimes even meet the hype, even then, like a lot of the time prices decline post-conference. But I guess from what you've said, and even from my perspective, it seems like there wasn't all that much, a lot of patting on the back and really sort of community building and just, really just building the culture of Sui more than anything rather than a blockbuster announcement last week. And even with the like major run up in Sui's price, prior to this conference, we've even seen Sui, hold up quite well, which is a very, very big signal when I'm looking at that from an investment standpoint, because it really goes against everything we're used to seeing in the space. So we'll link to this really good summary thread of some of the main announcements that did come out of Sui Basecamp. But to Simon's point, there were nothing that really shook the industry or were overly groundbreaking.
There was definitely nothing about Pokemon either, from what I've understood.
Yes.
So that whole rumor of Pokemon stuff, it was nothing announced at the Sui Basecamp. And, as you said, the prices didn't actually care to a degree about anything. They basically stayed solid since it's had its big run up. And I think that's a very positive sign for Sui that, hey, we've not done something amazing, but we've held a good show. People have enjoyed themselves by the sounds of it. And, we're still building. So that's my takeaway.
For sure. If anyone wants to see any of the speeches or presentations at Basecamp, they have all already been uploaded by the Sui team. So we'll link to that playlist on YouTube. Deep dives into certain projects that Miston Labs has worked on, such as Walrus, and even some third-party projects also getting their time on stage as well for anyone wanting to do their own research there. In terms of Ethereum, they have their next major upgrade. So it's been around 12 months or so since the Denkun upgrade. Pectra is coming out this week after lots of testing. The big focus on that, yes, it has, as we've covered previously, it has about 11 EIPs or Ethereum improvement proposals, sort of 11 features to really simplify it. That's the most of any major upgrade in the past. A lot of those are really focused on just improving staking in particular, like the experience of validators, and also trying to improve layer 2 scalability. So working on things like upping the amount of blob space or just making it, I guess, removing sort of the barriers or any potential congestion points that still are arguably prone to happening between the layer 2 and mainnet. So ultimately that should make the user experience on layer 2s even better. That should be going live this week. The fact it hasn't got anywhere near the anticipation as something like Denkun, I suppose, speaks to two things. I think one, it's not really anything to point at in terms of a big major upgrade. Yes, it's got 11 features, but it's nothing as simple as maybe the two previous major upgrades where a lot of people, it was relevant and applicable to a lot of people. And then the second of two reasons, I think, also just ETH investment sentiment. I think it's also with valuation of ETH coming down significantly, I think less people are following it as closely as they may have in the past, which is, I think, why this major upgrade, the Denkun upgrade, has snuck up on a number of people. So I certainly don't expect it to have a price impact, once it goes live, of course. But in terms of Ethereum and achieving its long-term roadmap, this is absolutely a major step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it demonstrates that Ethereum is still building, Ethereum is still delivering. So that in itself is positive news, that they are active, they are doing things. It's just not being reflected in the price. As for reasons why there's not as much hype around it, I think it's mainly because from a user perspective especially, no one really knows what's actually happening here.
Yeah.
So that's why there's probably less excitement about it. I mean, I don't even understand what some of these upgrades are. And, I'm not a developer, so I'm not expecting to understand all of them. I only understand about 2 or 3 of them. So that in itself is a reason why there's not a huge amount of hype around it. It's hard to communicate what's going on. I'm sure they're probably very important upgrades for Ethereum. Otherwise, obviously, they wouldn't even be happening. But best takeaway is Ethereum is still delivering. They are still upgrading. They are still moving forward. Can you say that about all projects? Probably not. So well done for them to continue growing Ethereum. Hopefully for holders, it does actually result in prices going up sooner rather than later.
Yeah, for sure. Just a quick one here. I noticed with Hyperliquid, they sort of announced that staking tiers were coming a few months ago. That has officially gone live, I think, as of earlier this week. So the first, I noticed in the language, this is important to note, staking tiers, the point of them is similar to things like Binance and major exchanges to start with. So, if I'm a heavy user of Hyperliquid, I'm incentivized in many ways to stake more hype tokens to, I guess, get a claim or be able to get a discount or cheaper sort of trading fees on the spot markets and the perps markets. So that's something that previously didn't exist for Hyperliquid. So overall, I think that's a more utility in many ways going to hype, or more reason to buy it if you are sort of a big user of Hyperliquid. But I did notice in the initial announcement, they did say the initial benefit of staking tiers is reduced trading fees. So sort of leaving it a bit open-ended as to whether there'll be any more benefits for, I guess, being like on one of these staking tiers. So again, that leaves room a bit for speculation. But I guess in terms of what has factually or actually happened, definitely the staking tiers are now live. So that's a bit of an update there for Hyperliquid.
That's some very sleuth detective work there, reading their words and interpreting that as there could be more to come, mate. Well done.
We'll see. We'll check back on it if we remember. And then just quickly here, I did notice this is almost reminiscent of 2022, 2021. We saw FIFA. They're still building on crypto rails, and they've actually decided to go on their own. So they've left. Their collections are going to be leaving Algorand, which they initially built on. And they also had expanded to Polygon, but they will be packing up on both of those and expanding to what is creatively called FIFA blockchain. And this is, I just quickly mentioned it here because I think it's more of the same sort of trend that we have been seeing for these older smart contract blockchains that had their window of opportunity, I think, in the early 2020s. But ultimately are now struggling for a unique, I guess, point of, competitive advantage, or a sustainable point of competitive advantage. So I guess this story here from FIFA leaving these two blockchains in particular, which I still do get quite a few questions about from members and other people in the crypto space. The fact we're still seeing projects leave these blockchains really isn't a good signal. And if things do turn around, I think it will be many months, potentially years, until momentum turns around for these blockchains. But personally, I don't expect them to get any of the same momentum or hype that they have in the past due to more competitors coming out like Sui and Solana.
This is an interesting one to follow. I mean, FIFA is, arguably one of the biggest brands in the world, so they have a lot of power in the space to want to control their own destiny. But we went from a world where everything was going to be built on Ethereum. I mean, I know that's too slow, too expensive. Everything's going to be built on a layer 2. And then we went, oh, hang on, no, I'll build my own layer 2, was the idea. And we had this concept that we're going to have companies have layer 2s and then just roll up to Ethereum, which kind of made sense. And now, hang on, no, we're going to build our own layer 1. So that's a real... that's not a good sign for Ethereum if now companies go, well, actually, we're going to find it easier to create our own layer 1. And like, these are blockchains, but these will be massively centralized blockchains. It's a very easy to use database is what FIFA are creating here. It's not a decentralized blockchain at all. Not that I've looked at it, but I'm pretty sure that'd be the case. Yeah, they want to control their own destiny. You kind of own the NFT, but really they own it and they can take it off you, which means it's not going to be a decentralized blockchain. It's a very fancy database. Yeah. Maybe that's where companies are going to go, though. And so that, to me, is like, okay, even the layer 2 theory is not necessarily working out. But big other brands probably don't want to go to the effort of creating their own layer 1, probably don't want the hassle. FIFA are like going, we are the masters of our own destiny, and we can. But smaller companies probably may still go, no, it's just easier for it to copy-paste a layer 2, like the OP stack kind of thing. That might be more probable for smaller companies. But, hey, this is FIFA, big brand, big company, taking a big stand here.
Yeah, well said. We'll keep an eye out on when this comes out. I'd be keen to see what it's all about. And with the next World Cup, I think coming out in the US, that's right. Donald Trump put the FIFA trophy famously at the start of the first ever crypto roundtable, which was just so random, as things often are with Trump. But no, we'll keep an eye on that for sure. In terms of overrated, underrated for this week, Simon, if you kick things off, what have you got for us?
So I've got an overrated thing here, which is Eric Trump being one of the headline speakers at Token 2049 in Dubai. And I'm not an anti-Donald Trump person by any means. I'm not a pro. I like to think I can sit on the fence pretty well. But Eric Trump being in crypto and being put on stage to talk about it, I don't know. I don't like that. I feel like he's not quite up there. Look, there are other talkers there. You got CZ, Arthur Hayes, some big people in the space, and to put Eric Trump, I guess, up on that kind of list of some people up there on stage, I don't know. He doesn't need to be there. He does need to be there. He's got a big shadow from his dad, but I don't know. I don't take his opinions on crypto as serious yet. I think he's got some more work to be on the stage with those kind of people.
Yeah, I think that point in particular about putting them on the same equal leveling with some of these people here is quite a thing. But I think certainly the sales aspect of it, the conference and all of that. But even with all those aspects, share your sentiment there. So I don't even know what he spoke about. Probably the Trump project, I assume.
World Liberty Finance.
Yeah, that's right. So no, good shout out there, Simon. And as I sort of alluded to earlier, this definitely went under the radar just by the nature of what it is when you're combining a word like stablecoins and then another word like US Treasury Department. A lot of people's eyes have already rolled over just by mentioning one of those two things. So you combine them and it's really bad news. But I think even with all that, I still wanted to highlight it. So if you still are with us, the fact that we have such an influential, entity in a sense, Department of Treasury there in the US, making an 18-page report on the progress of stablecoins and going, often I can quite easily see and tell how much effort and I guess understanding has been put into these reports. And yeah, I was quite impressed by the level of detail that they went into on the progress and the state of stablecoins and where things are headed. So for anyone who is interested, we will link to it below for anyone looking at maybe where stablecoins are going in the future and what all the hype and why people are talking about them so much in 2025. I think it's come out at a very good time for anyone wanting to sort of get up to speed on the latest for stablecoins. But that is a wrap for this week. Hopefully another green week for Bitcoin as it's looking for its 5th consecutive one, Simon. And who knows, maybe 6-figure territory for Bitcoin before too long. But until then, we'll keep you all posted and thank you all for tuning in. If you are looking for more insights, check out the free weekly market insights. You can get delivered straight to your inbox every Friday. So you can subscribe to our newsletter at collectiveshift.io/newsletter. That's collectiveshift.io/newsletter.